Today I'll be talking about how can the victims be identified from the point of view of forensic anthropology rather than the dental aspects. First of all, look at both of these skulls. You can easily tell me that which one of it belongs to a human species and which one of it belongs to a non-human species. And this is very important from the point of view of forensic anthropology. Now, how can you tell the difference? And it's very easy. You just have to identify the difference between the skull and the bone of two different species. Let's say from this bone, as you can look from this point of view, as you can see that it is obviously not belongs to a human species. So for a crime, if a non-human species skull is found in a crime scene, if it is not related to the crime, is usually being eliminated and further investigation will not be carried out. Now, you find a human remains in a crime scene. Let's talk from the view of forensic anthropology. What will you do? So first of all, we'll be identifying the big fours: the age, genders, the race, and also the stature. Now, let's take an example by looking at this bone. If you find this kind of bone in the crime scene, how can you identify whether this bone belongs to this human skull or this human skull? What we usually do from the point of view of forensic anthropology, first of all, we will do things called process of elimination, whereby we eliminate some of the evidences. Secondly, we try to not knowing anything about the crime scene because it can bias us. However, we have to examine the remains objectively. Thirdly, we have to look at the skull first, determine the age and also the gender of the skull. Then we will extract the DNA from the remains and we compare the DNA to the mother, from the mother, and then we will be looking, is there any injury on the skull? And injuries can be matched to X-ray or diseases traced to the scars on certain bones. Even the teeth. What are we looking on the teeth? Teeth can indicate that if the person took antibiotics on a particular time. Now I will be talking about the first four. First of all, I will be talking about the age. How do you identify the age of a human remains? As we age, separate pieces of bone in our body actually fuse together. For example, as you can see from this skull, sutures are formed. These are sutures. The yellow lines here, these are sutures. And they are appearing in zigzag manners. It's because of ossification, that's why they fuse together. Secondly, we can look up under the microscope, we can count the osteons. What are osteons? Osteons are actually minute tunnels which you can find in the bones, and it contains of our nerves and also blood vessels. And as we age, the osteon counts increase, and that's how we determine the age. Secondly, I will be talking about genders. How do you know that the skull belongs to a male or a female? As you all know, that female gives birth, so the pelvic bone will be one of the most prominent features that you can identify. So women will have larger pelvic bones to allow rooms for the delivering of a baby, whereas for men, the pelvic bone will be slightly smaller. And the second feature that you can find on the pelvic bone will be the subpubic angle. And for women, the subpubic angle will be more than 90 degrees, and for men, it will be less than 90 degrees. And the use of pelvic bone is actually very accurate, about 95%. However, it's not useful when a person haven't hit the puberty. And for the other features, you can refer to the skull, and I'm sure that you are now very skillful in identifying the difference between human skulls between female and male. We live in a multicultural and a multiracial society. Ethnicity is very important as one of the features that we have to determine. Now, first of all, for Caucasian, what you can expect is Caucasian usually they have narrower face, high bridge nasal bone, and the upper incisor at the lingual surface will be flatter, chin are slightly more prominent, and the cheekbones are very high and flat. Secondly, we'll be talking about Negroid. Usually, they will have a broader nose bridge with a wider nasal opening and a subnasal groove. Skulls have an upward sloping jaws, flat lingual surface of the upper incisors as well. Whereas for Asians, like say Mongoloids, they have a broader face, slightly squarer, forward sloping and wing-like cheekbones, lower nose bridge, and the upper incisors are shoulder shaped, and the skull tends to be more flatter. So the other aspect that we can see is also whether we can find whether there's hairs being discovered in the crime scene, and we can also check the hair color. Okay, and now I will be talking about stature, and what we usually do is we measure the height or the weight of a victim. So if we are lucky enough, we can find the whole skeleton. If the skeleton that we found is a whole, direct measurement will be taken, and we will determine the height of the victim. And usually 1 or a few inches will be added in account with the flesh, the presence of the flesh. Or if we manage to find the femur bone but not the whole skeleton, we will usually use the formula that the height of the victim will be about, the height of a person will be about 2 2/3 of the length of the femur. Or we can use the other measurement, which is from the tip of the left fingertips to the right, and this is about the height of a human as well. Then we'll be talking about the weight. However, usually the weight is very difficult to be taken because the fat leaves no markings on the bones. So what we usually do is we will try to look for the muscles, because developed muscles will leave clear markers on bones, and we can find out about one's lifestyles as well, and also the weight of the person. After that, we will use medical records, or even disease and previous injury and birth defects will leave the marks on the bone, which is easier for us to determine who are the victims. Another method to identify victims is DNA profiling. In the past, DNA profiling has been successful to solve the crime. In cases whereby the skeleton is the only evidence that you can find in the crime scene, DNA profiling is carried out by extracting the mitochondrial DNA instead of the nuclear DNA, as the nuclear DNA is highly unlikely to be extracted from the skeleton. So what we do is, first of all, we will send the samples of the bones or the skull to the laboratory, whereby mitochondrial DNA will be then extracted. The second step, we will carry out a PCR process, which is also known as polymerase chain reaction, to amplify the mitochondrial DNA, as the DNA extracted at first is limited. Thirdly, DNA sequencing will then be carried out, and by comparing the results of DNA sequencing with the reference database, the potential identity of the victims can be identified. And thank you for your kind attention. For further information, please read on our elaboration below. Thank you.